එදිනෙදා ඔබේ මුළු සිරුරටම රැකවරණයක්. සුදේශී කොඹ සබන්.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, dawn of hope. Vesak celebrations muted as streets remain empty and observances restricted to home and families. Social responsibility. President's secretary issues a call to public servants to donate part or whole salary for May to reduce budget deficit. Homebound. 19 more COVID-19 patients recover, while 197 expat workers stranded in Dubai arrive back home. Urgent assistance. The Asian Development Bank provides $25 million lifeline for SPC to purchase essential medication. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Thursday, the 7th of May 2020.
SMS කර රුපියල් මිලියන 3ක මුල්තැන්ගේ උපකරණ දිනාගෙන අවුරුද්දෙම 100 ටයිම් සේව් කරගන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Pankaj Naik. Let's start with the local stories. Now, the Vesak festival dawned today, albeit in a subdued backdrop, with none of the usual colourfulness on display along city streets. The public have been urged to stay at home and engage in solemn family celebrations as the country's virus situation shows signs of improvement and as the country prepares for a partial lifting of lockdown restrictions next week. The Festival of Vesak, which commemorates the birth, enlightenment and passing away of Lord Buddha, is the most significant religious and cultural festival in the country and is a day celebrated by Sri Lankans of all faiths. Traditionally, the streets would have exhibited an air of festive joy, with dansols providing refreshment and snacks to the thousands of people who throng the streets to take in the lights, colour and creativity of the mega pandals and decorative lanterns throughout the city. Last year, celebrations were muted as the dark cloud of the Easter attacks still remained hanging over the country, and Sri Lankans saw this year's festival as something of a much-needed release from the tragic year past. However, this year the streets remain virtually empty, with no crowds, no pandals and no means of celebrating the festival the way Sri Lankans used to do, as the threat of the COVID-19 virus still remains. The faithful have been urged to stay at home with family and loved ones and engage in the fundamental aspects of Vesak, that is, in meditation and in the observance of the eightfold path of right understanding, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness and right concentration. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in his Vesak message says that just as how the three threats of famine, evil beings and diseases faced by the people of Visala Mahanuwara in Dambadiva was defeated by the recitation of Buddhist stanzas as recommended by Lord Buddha, he is confident that the country and its people could similarly benefit from the practice of the teachings of Lord Buddha during this Vesak period. The President added that with the blessings and the guidance of the Venerable Mahasangha given to conduct the state Vesak festival using electronic technology, religious practices can be joined in from the safety of people's homes with utmost devotion. Hence, the statement urges citizens to practice the teachings of Lord Buddha and adhere to the government's COVID-19 prevention measures. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa stated in his Vesak message that the commitment, patience and equanimity of people were the reason for the country to reach a position of being able to overcome the crisis. The Premier urged Sri Lankans to mark the Vesak festival in a manner that would not result in the reversal of the successes gained in the past 2 months. He reminded the public that the crisis has brought realization to the world of the impermanence of life and that the only way to overcome the crisis is through discipline in thought, deed and speech. Meanwhile, the colourful sight of brightly coloured Vesak pandals, prepared months ahead in preparation of the festival, this time around are a noted absentee on the streets of Colombo.
2019 වර්ෂයේ පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරයත් එක්ක අපිට විසක් තොරන් නිර්මාණය කළත් ඒවා ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරන්නට නොහැකි වුණා. 2020 වසරේ විශාල බලාපොරොත්තු ඇතුව අපි තොරන් නිර්මාණය යෙදුණා. නමුත් මේ ලෝකේ පුරා පෙතර ගිය කොවිඩ් වසංගතයත් එක්ක අපිට මේ තොරන් ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරන්නට බැරි වෙනවා. පොසොන් මාසෙවත් අපි මේ තොරන් ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරන්නට අපට වාසනාව ලැබෙයි කියලා ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා.
Also absent from the streets this time around are the usual traders selling Vesak decorations, lanterns and greeting cards. Although such items have been manufactured for sale, there appear to be no takers, with the curfew keeping members of the public off the streets and traders lamenting the lack of opportunity.
අවුරුද්දට අපිට විකුණා ගන්න බැරුව ගියා බෝම්බ පේකේස් එකේම අපි ලොකු පාඩුවක් කරලා තියෙන අපි පොලියට සල්ලි අරන් ණය අරන් ලෝන් අරන් තමයි මේවා කරන්නේ.
කොවිඩ් 19 වසංගත නිසා අපිට ඔක්කොම අඩපණ වෙලා ඉන්නේ. බඩු තිබුණාට ගන්න සෙනග එන්නේ නැහැ.
මා අවුරුද්දේ මේ ස්ථානයේ ආශා විශාලතම බෞද්ධ කොඩිය ගහනවා. ඒක ගැහුවේ මගේ තාත්තා. මේ අවුරුද්ද අපි ඒ වයින් යඩක්කුත් කරන්න අධිෂ්ඨාන කරගෙන හිටියා. ඒකත් කරගන්න බැරි වුණා.
Another sector affected by the lockdown restrictions are traders who usually trade in flower offerings at many of the more heavily frequented major Buddhist shrines during the festival.
දැන් ඉතින් ආදායම් හොඳටම අඩු වෙලා තියෙන කොහටවත් මල් ලැබන්නත් නැහැ. මේ බිස්නස් උත් නැහැ, සෙනගෙන්නෙත් නැහැ.
මාත්‍යා ඉතින් මේ කොරෝනා ආපු හින්දා තමයි ඉතින් අපිට අමාරුනේ. නැත්තම් ඉතින් වෙසක් දවස් කියන්නේ ඉතින් මාත්‍යා අපි රුපියල් 2000 3000 හොයාගන්න දවසක්.
Meanwhile, with health authorities urging the public to engage in their religious activities at home, many families prepared their lanterns as part of family activities. This included Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his family as well.
නිෂ්පාදිත දිනය කවදත් අලුත් වටවල තේ අරගන්න.
වටවල තේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ තේ එක.
Now, Sri Lanka today reached yet another unwanted milestone in the COVID-19 crisis. The country's total number of cases breached the 800 mark, with 7 more positive infections being confirmed during the day. But more importantly, 19 people were also discharged from hospital today, giving a boost to the island's health sector. Meanwhile, under the government's repatriation program, 197 Sri Lankan expats stranded in Dubai were also brought back to the country and were directed to quarantine facilities.
Sri Lanka's overall number of COVID-19 infections surpassed the 800 mark today. The first Sri Lankan to be diagnosed with COVID-19 was reported on the 11th of March, and since it took 14 days for the first batch of 100 patients to be reported. The second group of 100 patients were reported within a span of 18 days, and the third set of 100 patients were detected in a period of 9 days. Showing a rapid increase in the number of patients, the fourth batch of 100 cases were reported within 4 days. It only took 2 days for fifth and sixth batches of 100 coronavirus patients to be confirmed in the country. In comparison to the previous set of cases, the 7th and 8th batches of 100 COVID-19 patients were reported in 5 days, showing a slow in the spread. Meanwhile, with the identification of 7 fresh cases today, the total tally of infections in the country stands at 804, while 563 among them remain active cases. On the bright side, 19 coronavirus patients were discharged from hospital today. This means 232 patients have fully recovered from the virus in Sri Lanka. 2 naval personnel are also among the patients discharged today, bringing the total number of naval personnel recoveries to 14. As of 12:30 p.m. today, a total of 489 cases of coronavirus infections have been identified since the first Navy sailor was diagnosed with COVID-19 on the 22nd of April after contracting the virus during operations conducted to track down persons suspected to have contracted the virus in the area of Suduvella in Jayala. Among the 489 cases are 400 Navy personnel and their associates. Outside the clusters of COVID-19 infected naval personnel, only 83 cases were detected from quarantine centres and through field inspections since the 22nd of April. From yesterday's 29 positive infections reported, 24 are naval personnel. According to a report compiled by the Epidemiology Unit, taking into account the districts of the infected residents or their place of quarantine, 7 days prior to diagnosis, the highest number of COVID-19 patients are naval personnel with 367. Colombo continues to be the district with the highest number of infections with 150 positive cases. Putlam, Kalutara and Gampaha, which are designated as high-risk areas, reported 35, 34 and 36 positive infections respectively. In the meantime, PCR test results of the 60 associates of the COVID-19 victim who resided at the Metsanda Sevena housing complex provided confirmation that they weren't infected. However, PCR tests continue to be conducted in populated areas in Colombo, and today PCR tests were performed and blood samples were obtained from randomly selected individuals residing in the Mihidusenpura housing complex in Dematagoda. With the first Navy sailor to be infected with COVID-19, who also happened to be the first case of infection from Polonnaruwa district, steps were taken to isolate 12 villagers in the district from the 23rd of April. Measures were taken to lift the state of isolation in 10 villages, with the 2 villages of Somapura and Abhepura being reopened today. A 54-year-old female from Aluthweediya in Valigama was rushed to a private hospital in Mathura town this morning after developing a fever and a cough. The doctor who treated the patient had subsequently advised the patient to be transferred to the Mathura General Hospital. However, the patient's family members had disregarded medical advice and had instead taken the woman back to her residence. Unfortunately, the patient had passed away on her way. Later, her burial was interrupted by the Valigama police, who took measures to transport her remains to the Mathura hospital in order to obtain an autopsy report. Further investigations into the matter are currently underway. Meanwhile, Army personnel celebrated the birthdays of 2 children in quarantine at the Army Quarantine Centre located in Elephant Pass, Jaffna. The 2 children aged 6 and 12 are both residents of Keselvatta in Colombo. Happy birthday to you. In the meantime, the 13-month-old infant of a COVID-19 infected Navy sailor from Kosgoda in Balapitiya, attached to the Valisara Naval Base, underwent a PCR test today. 101 residents of Totalanga and Nagalagam Street were sent to the Galkanda Army Quarantine Centre on the 15th of April, and 25 drug addicts among them have been directed to the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Centre on the instructions of the Army Commander. Employees of the Clinical Waste Disposal Company at a government hospital in Keravalapitiya underwent PCR tests recently, and 2 among them were diagnosed with COVID-19. Another employee was admitted to the Ragama Teaching Hospital after exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms today, while 39 more employees were directed to the Zahira Quarantine Centre in Putlam this afternoon. Meanwhile, 192 Sri Lankan expats in Dubai who were unable to return to the country due to travel restrictions and the closure of airports were repatriated today. Upon landing, they underwent the disinfection process, following which they were directed to quarantine centres.
කොරෝනා වෛරසය පැතිරීම වළක්වන්න සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න.
Now, another batch of people who were stranded in the Western Province owing to the curfew being brought into effect to curb the COVID-19 outbreak was sent on their way home today. Over 1,000 people were thus liberated from areas under the jurisdiction of the Mirihana Police Division.
Another stage of liberating people from outstations who have been stranded in the Western Province for over 40 days was worked off today. As such, almost 1,200 people stranded across 15 police areas of the Mirihana Police Division were convened at the Mirihana Police Grounds this morning. Their body temperature was checked and the group was subjected to disinfection before they were sent on their way aboard buses. In the meantime, police say that over 47,000 persons have been arrested for curfew violations since the curfew first came into effect back on the 20th of March. Over 12,000 vehicles have also been seized. In the meantime, the Consumer Affairs Authority of the Western Province took measures to take legal action against a trader who artificially created a shortage of rice. The wholesale trader from the 5th Cross Street in Petta had hoarded stocks of rice without releasing them to the market. The CAA, with the use of an undercover operative, ascertained that rice stocks were being hoarded. They took the 700 bags of rice, each weighing 25 kilograms, into custody and ordered the consignment be sold in line with the market price. CAA officers of the Western Province also took action against another shop owner in the 5th Cross Street in Petta for storing fruit unfit for human consumption, mixed with fruit of good quality and attempting to sell them. Meanwhile, public health inspectors of Horana discovered a stock of potatoes, onions and pumpkin unfit for human consumption while stored at a residence. The suspect, who owns a mobile business, had intended to sell the consignment door to door during the curfew.
Now, Secretary to the President, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, has written a letter to all state institutions requesting for voluntary donations of a part or whole salaries in a bid to reduce the country's financial burden. In his letter, Dr. Jayasundara says that with government revenue down in the face of the COVID-19 virus, any such donations made could help balance the country's budget deficit for the month of May and help reduce the 100 billion rupees required for the payment of state sector salaries and allowances.
Secretary to the President, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, last night, in a letter addressed to all state institutions, has requested state sector employees to donate either whole or part of their salaries for the month of May in a bid to reduce Sri Lanka's budget deficit. In the letter, he pointed out that the country's international trade, export and tourism sectors have stalled, and foreign income and government revenue have been blocked. Hence, such a move could go a long way in reducing the state's burden of requiring at least rupees 100 billion to pay government salaries and allowances. The letter adds that such donations made by state institutions, government departments, the central bank and other state banks could go a long way towards increasing government revenue. He added that in the past month, the public has been prevented from travelling, shopping, and a lot of spending was curtailed. However, while the government seeks loans and aid from other countries, the country must demonstrate its internal strength with such a move. Further, the letter says that although domestic debt could be managed, foreign debt repayments need to be maintained. The President's Secretary calls such a donation by civil servants and the armed forces as well a social responsibility. Dr. Jayasundara has led the initiative by donating his salary for the month of May. Following the request, government and opposition figures expressed various opinions on the move.
පෞද්ගලික ඉල්ලීමක් හැටියට කරන මේක තනිකරම ජනාධිපතිගේ බලතල අයුතු ලෙස ජනාධිපති ලේකම්වරයා පාවිච්චි කිරීමක් එහෙමයි.
රජයට විශාල වශයෙන් මුදල් පොරොන්දු වෙලා තියෙනවා ජාත්‍යන්තරයෙන්. ඒව ලංකාවට එමේ ප්‍රමාදයක් තියෙනවා. මම නෑ කියන්නේ. නමුත් පොරොන්දු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ මුදල් පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් රජයට. පඩි කප්පාදු වෙනවා කියන්නේ ඒක එයාට දරා ගන්න බෑ.
මේ රටේ කුරුළු යුද්ධේ තියෙන කාලේ රටේ දැවැන්ත ආර්ථික අර්බුදයක් ඇති වෙනකොට රාජ්‍ය සේවයේ හිටපු හැම කෙනෙක්ම Tamanට දෙන්න පුළුවන් උපරිම දායකත්වය ලබා දුන්නා. ඒ පරිත්‍යාගයන් උපරිම ඉටු කරා. ඒ වගේම තමයි මේ අවස්ථාවේදී මේ පරිත්‍යාගය කියන එක අපේ රටේ රාජ්‍ය සේවයේ සීළු දෙනා ඉටු කරන්නට කැමති.
පුළුවන් රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන්ගෙමුත් යම්කිසි භාගයක් හෝ පුළුවන් ප්‍රමාණයක් පුළුවන් නම් දෙන්න කියලා කිව්වේ බලෙන් ඉල්ලුවේ නෑ. දැන් මම ડોક્ટર ජයසුන්දර ජනාධිපති ලේකම්තුමාට දුන්නා. මගේ මාසික වටපොකුත් මම දුන්න අර මුදලට. මම කැමති නම් විතරයි දෙන්න ඕනේ. මේක බලෙන් කවුරුවත් ඉල්ලන්නේ නෑ.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is optimistic that the economy adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic could be rebuilt on a solid footing. The presidential task force in charge of the economic revival and poverty eradication has been entrusted with the responsibility of formulating a new economic model to achieve this objective. Talks in this regard were held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday.
With work resuming on the 11th of March, a special discussion was held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday to discuss ways to uplift the economy of the country. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force in charge of economic revival and poverty eradication, Basil Rajapaksa, Secretary to the President Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, and several owners of leading business also participated in the meeting. The President said that the apparel and tourism industries, which contribute to the economy of the country, should be relaunched with a new facade. The meeting also focused on attracting foreign investors for the port city and the Hambantota industrial zone. The Presidential Media Unit announced that the secretaries of the ministries have been entrusted with the responsibility of attracting more investments instead of loans. It was also discussed to introduce various innovations that had been locally made to the global market. The task force was also requested to prepare the necessary background to develop medications that can be developed within the country so that a large sum of money that is spent on importing medications could be reduced. Head of the task force, Basil Rajapaksa, said that the newly instituted task force has the capability of fulfilling its mandate with a new vision in order to achieve objectives set out by the President.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank has reviewed the current monetary policy stance and decided to reduce the standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate. Now, both are reduced by 50 basis points, and with it, SDFR stands at 5.50% and SLFRs at 6.50%. The move is effective from the close of business yesterday, the 6th of May. The CBSL says that the Monetary Board arrived at this decision considering the necessity for further support to the economy to weather the adverse economic impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, given subdued inflationary pressure. With this decision, policy interest rates of the central bank have been reduced by 150 basis points thus far in 2020, in addition to the other measures taken to ease monetary conditions in the market. The Monetary Board also notes its disappointment, saying that the market lending rates have not declined in line with the series of measures taken to ease monetary policy and monetary conditions thus far during the year. Therefore, it urges financial institutions to reduce lending rates without further delay, adding that failure to do so will compel the central bank to take appropriate regulatory action to bring down market lending rates. Now, the Asian Development Bank has provided a guarantee for a $25 million trade loan to the State Pharmaceutical Corporation of Sri Lanka. Now, the loan will go towards the purchase of medical supplies as part of the country's response to the novel coronavirus pandemic. The supplies to be purchased by SPC with the loan will include personal protective equipment such as N95 medical masks, surgical masks, as well as medicines to treat people who have tested positive for COVID-19. ADB's trade finance program guaranteed 85% of the trade loan extended by Standard Chartered Bank to the state-owned People's Bank and onwards to SPC to support its import of these critical medical goods. Investment specialist at ADB's trade finance program, Roberto Leva, was quoted saying that this assistance will help the SPC to purchase urgently needed medicines and protective equipment for frontline health workers and patients. Now, Sri Lanka's gross official reserves were down by $353.84 million to $7.179 billion in April 2020 from $7.533 billion in March this year. By the end of April, foreign currency reserves were $6.74 billion, while the country's IMF reserve position was $65.3 million. Special drawing rights stood at $0.5 million, gold reserves at 369 million rupees, and other reserve assets were $1 million. During the year up to 6th of May, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated against the US dollar by 3.9%. Given the cross-currency exchange rate movements, the Sri Lankan rupee appreciated 1.5% against the sterling pound, 2.1% against the Indian rupee, while depreciating 0.6% against the euro and 6% against the Japanese yen during this period. Elsewhere, the Bank of England has warned that the UK economy is heading towards its sharpest recession on record, feared to be the worst economic slump since 1706. The coronavirus impact would see the economy shrink 14% this year based on the lockdown being relaxed in June. Scenarios drawn up by the bank to illustrate the economic impact said COVID-19 was dramatically reducing jobs and income in the UK. Bank Governor Andrew Bailey says that there would be no quick return to normality. He described the downturn as unprecedented and said consumers would remain cautious even when lockdown restrictions are lifted. We will see you again shortly after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, a chemical gas leak at an LG polymers plant in southern India today killed at least 13 people, with over 300 rushed to hospital and hundreds more evacuated from nearby areas. South Korean battery maker LG Chemical Limited, the owner of the facility located around 14 kilometers away from Visakhapatnam city, said that the gas leak had been brought under control and that it was looking into the incident. Videos show emergency workers in the area pushing to help victims, with some of whom appearing to be listless and disoriented. The Commissioner of Visakhapatnam City Corporation said styrene leaked from the plant during the early hours of this morning when families in the surrounding areas, or villages I should say, were asleep. The Commissioner added that the plant was reopened in the past few days after India relaxed a nationwide lockdown imposed on March 25th to contain the spread of the novel coronavirus. According to the municipal corporation, areas within an approximately 3-kilometer radius of the plant were vulnerable, and after cross-referencing maps of the affected area, there is at least one coronavirus containment zone in the neighborhood. Now, Director General of World Health Organization Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says that countries emerging from the lockdown face the risk of regressing back into a state of lockdown if they mishandle the situation. He added that the virus has taught the world that investing in the country's health sectors now will help save lives in the future.
With international efforts to contain the coronavirus pandemic still continuing, total global recoveries rose by 8,831, taking the overall figure past 1.3 million. Global infections, however, rose by 19,219 cases, bringing overall global infections to 3,836,601, while fatalities reported at 265,366. President of the United States Donald Trump says that the outbreak had hit the US harder than the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor in World War II, as well as the 9/11 attacks 2 decades ago. He made these remarks when he spoke to reporters in the Oval Office yesterday. The US reported over 2,000 fatalities within the last 24 hours, while the number of active cases were reported at 975,312. Meanwhile, in Europe, despite a decline in number of daily fatalities reported from Spain, France and Italy, with deaths falling below 200 last week, the three countries are once again reporting an increase in deaths. Spain reported 244 deaths, Italy 369, and France 278 deaths within the last 24 hours. German Chancellor Angela Merkel yesterday announced steps to ease the coronavirus lockdown, saying the first phase of the pandemic had passed, but there was still a long way to go. Merkel told reporters that they were at a point where the goal of slowing the spread of the virus has been achieved and that they have been able to protect their health systems. According to the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the continent reported more than 50,000 coronavirus cases up to now. South Africa tops the list with almost 8,000 confirmed cases, as the World Health Organization expresses concerns of community spread in West Africa. In the meantime, India's health ministry says the number of coronavirus infections rose to 53,045 overall infections and 1,787 fatalities, despite a strict weeks-long lockdown. The surge in cases has come from the densely packed cities of Mumbai, New Delhi and Ahmedabad, which are also the growth engines of the Indian economy. Japan's economy minister Yasutoshi Nishimura says that Japan's state of emergency could be lifted early in some areas of the country that have seen declines in new infections. During a media briefing, he said that it was possible the emergency could be lifted for some areas around May 14th. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned of the risks of returning to lockdown if countries emerging from pandemic restrictions do not manage transitions extremely carefully and in a phased approach.
The risk of returning to lockdown remains very real if countries do not manage the transition extremely carefully and in a phased approach. More than 3.5 million cases of COVID-19 and almost 250,000 deaths have now been reported to WHO. Since the beginning of April, an average of around 80,000 new cases have been reported to WHO every day. Crisis can exacerbate existing inequalities, which is demonstrated in higher rates of hospitalization and death among certain populations in many countries. We must address this now and in the long term by prioritizing diagnosis and care for those who are most at risk. This is not only the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. We cannot end the pandemic until we address the inequalities that are fueling it. If we learn anything from COVID-19, it must be that investing in health now will save lives later.
Now, our humanitarian arm, AdaDerana, continues to take the initiative to provide relief to people across the island undergoing hardships while being confined to their homes during the curfew. Let's take a look at what they do.
Chairman of the Derana Media Network, Dilip Jayavira, joined the AdaDerana initiative to donate equipment towards a special ward set up at the Disoisa Hospital for Women, which is treating expectant mothers suspected of contracting the COVID-19 virus. As members of the public continue to be confined to their homes amid the countrywide curfew, AdaDerana continues to provide relief to them. 52,500 parcels of dry rations were distributed to temples, churches, mosques, Hindu temples, as well as many orphanages and elders' homes. Meanwhile, residents from 3 villages in the Anuradhapura Divisional Secretariat area donated 1,500 kilograms of rice to AdaDerana. In addition, the Raga Maleesans Hospital, together with AdaDerana, provided safety kits for all public health inspectors in the Gampa district. AdaDerana aims to continue its humanitarian efforts hand in hand with dialogue.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.